صل على محمد وآل محمد.
الثاني على حب الحسن والحسين.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
الثالث إلى سيدتنا ومولاتنا فاطمة.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
أعوذ بالله من شر الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، وصلى الله على سيدنا وحبيبنا أبا القاسم محمد.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
وعلى آل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. أما بعد. Respected scholars, elders, brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Amongst the many topics that we aim to learn from Karbala and what Imam Hussein stood for on the 10th of Muharram, besides the idea of role models, besides the idea of differentiating between God's entrusted people on earth and those that oppose and rebate, we aim to learn the idea that the Imam tries to show us what identity to have, and the idea of appearance. As we find that appearance is at the utmost importance as a believer of Ahlul Bayt, because the appearance says a lot about a person. And in particular reference, inshallah, we'd like to look at the idea of hijab tonight, in the characteristic of Sayyida Zainab and what she stood for on the 10th of Muharram. Inshallah, I'd like to start by looking at the idea of hijab and touch on a particular area prior to Islam. Was there hijab in religions prior to Islam? Was there hijab in the periods of Jahiliyyah? And how did Islam come to reform it? And the idea of appearance, we'll touch up on the idea of appearance. What is hijab in essence? What is the idea of being modern and religious? Can someone be modern and religious? We'll look at that. And then we'd like to look at examples from history where we can see the true identity of hijab. To start, please give a loud salawat. Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Before Islam, Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Before Islam, in the period of 500 years before Islam, we find in the Bible, the first book of Corinthians, chapter 11, verse 6, Saint Paul writes a letter to Corinthians. What does he write in this letter? Now look at the idea of hijab in Christianity. Saint Paul writes to Corinthians, he says, tell the believing woman to wear a veil on their heads. Tell the believing woman to wear a veil on their heads, or to shave their heads bald. Christianity. First book of Corinthians, chapter 11, verse 6, in the Bible. We find that on one hand, and then we look at the Jahiliyyah times. Let's give a reference in the idea now in the time of Jahiliyyah. We find when the Quran comes forth, it tells the woman, because a lot of people come forth and say, I can't find where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says wear a hijab in the Quran. Can you show me? We say, well, look at the Quran, you have to understand what? The history. When the Quran was revealed, what kind of people were there back? And what did they wear? What kind of issues did they face? When the Quran comes and tells the woman, lower from your hijab. Does that mean they did or did not wear a hijab like in the Jahiliyyah days? Of course, it means they wore a particular type of hijab. When it says bring down from your veils to cover your neck and bosom area, meaning what? In the time of Jahiliyyah there was a hijab. And when it comes forth and people come and they ask, they say, can a person wear hijab modestly? Because what is the prerequisite of hijab for a female? In the narrations it says the face and the hands are the only things that are allowed to be seen in the hijab of the female. The rest, if it does not show your contour lines, then you can wear it. Does it matter, someone may ask, if it's a designer brand, or that it's a particular color, or that it's Gucci, or it's Chanel as an example? Can I still wear that particular garment or particular hijab? As in, where's the, does it say anywhere in the hadith that you cannot be elegant and wear the hijab modestly? Well, of course not. You can. You can wear the best of clothes, because someone comes and asks, it says, us Muslims, we are oppressed, we don't have anything. On the contrary, there's a couple of things that's haram, the rest is all halal for you. You can drive the best of cars. You can drive the Ferraris, the Lamborghinis, you can wear the best garments. As long as you're in the footsteps of Ahlul Bayt. As long as you pray, you fast, you do your prerequisites, you know who Ahlul Bayt are, and you follow in their footsteps. Why is it that you cannot have the best of things, have the best of houses? Is it halal for people other than the followers of Ahlul Bayt, but not halal for Ahlul Bayt? Of course not. But you have to stay within the parameters of Islam. Wear the hijab properly. And for the men as well. When someone was to come forth and say there's no hijab for men, on the contrary, when hijab was instilled first and foremost, it addressed the males. It says, and lower from your gaze. That's your test, brothers. Lower from your gaze. That was the first test. And remember, if you're looking at the idea of appearance, now religiosity has been confused over time. When someone comes and looks at extremists, and we all know how they look like. When someone was to look at extremists, and the extremists come forth and say, this is how the Prophet of Islam looked. Our Prophet had such beauty that people would come forth and come to the religion because just looking at the aura of his face, just looking at his beauty, they would come towards Islam. Now imagine what kind of person or what kind of beauty the Prophet had. And people come and say, no, let your, for example, don't clean yourself from your beads, whatever, let it go as bad as it gets. That's how the Prophet liked it. Shave your head, don't look tidy. On the contrary, as a Shia of Ahlul Bayt, tells you take care of yourself. There are prerequisites. You have to look presentable. Someone wants to understand Islam, wants to understand Ahlul Bayt, they have to be able to look at you and say, he looks very approachable. He looks beautiful. I want to get to know him. I want to look at him. That's what the Prophet of Islam and his aura let the people around him. In Christianities of Najran, in Mubahala, what happened? We mentioned this a couple of nights ago. In Mubahala he brings forth Imam Ali, Sayyid Fatima, Hassan and Hussein to the Christians of Najran. Now they were about to send the curses on each other to see who's the liar. Now the Christians of Najran, what happens? He runs to the Prophet, says, do not pray to Allah, do not make your dua. He says, why? He says, the aura of you five, by God, if it told the mountain to move, it would move. He says, that's the aura that you had. That's the aura. But on the flip side, when we look at possessions on this earth, if we were to look at the possessions to have and to hoard wealth, does it have its side effects? Of course it does. In a beautiful narration for Fatima al-Zahra, when she goes to her father, the Prophet of Islam, and she says, Father, I want a ring. I want a ring. He says, not a problem. So he taught her a particular prayer. And he says, pray this, remove the front of the prayer mat and you shall find a ring. So Fatima al-Zahra does that. She prays. At the conclusion of the prayer, she lifts the prayer mat and there it is, a ring. She takes it, she wears it. She goes to sleep that night. When she goes to sleep in her dreams, Sayyida Fatima sees a place in paradise. And she describing it to her father. She goes up, she sees a table with 3 legs. It did not have a 4th leg and it was shaky. So the next day she goes to the Prophet of Islam, she says, Father, O Prophet of Islam, I saw such and such. And the Prophet says, yes, everything has its side effects. Everything you have on this earth, you are accountable for on the day of judgment. She says, you took this. He says, it's taken from you. That's why we have that the last prophet that shall enter paradise from the prophets is the Prophet Sulaiman. Why? Because he had the greatest empire. He has a lot to account for and to be questioned before entering paradise. When Bahlul gives us the beautiful example in the court of Harun al-Rashid. Harun looks at Bahlul, he says, Bahlul, tell me of the day of judgment. How shall the people stand? He says, you really want to know? He says, yes, tell me, Bahlul. He says, bring me a hot plate and I want a fire under it. He says, not a problem. He brought forth the hot plate and there was a fire under it. And he says, I'll go first, Harun. Look at what I do and do the same. He jumps on to that hot plate. He says, I am Bahlul. I own this broomstick, 2 sets of clothes, and he jumps off. He says, Harun, it's your turn. Harun gets on. He says, I am Harun al-Rashid. I own this piece of garment. I own it, and then he jumps off. He says, it's too hot. I can't handle it. He says, Bahlul looks at him. He says, Harun, you forgot this palace and that palace. You forgot this amount of money you have here. This amount of camel you have there. You will be accountable. And the most you'll be accountable is for that chair that you sit on. That's not rightfully yours. To give us an example of what, brothers and sisters, on the day of judgment, everything you have on this earth will be provided for. You will be accountable. So remember what you do with your money. Remember what you do with your time. And remember what kind of message you send. By not only how you move, by how you talk to people, and how your character will affect those around you. The Prophet says to the mu'mineen, be like water. How so? How is a mu'min to be like water? He says, be like water in the gathering of your friends. When water is present, it purifies all those around it. And let that be your character. Let be that your character, brothers and sisters. To show akhlaq of Ahlul Bayt. Within a group, people will come forth and they will gain from you. So be like water. That's the example given. Hijab and how you wear the hijab. Not only for the sisters, and how you, brothers, use your gaze and how you act around the sisters. That's also a hijab. What you wear is also a hijab, brothers. Now when someone comes forth by the name of Ayan Hirsa Ali, in 2004, August 29th, short documentary, hand in hand with Theo van Gogh, which was assassinated as a result of that documentary. When she was asked, she says, why is it that you show such a documentary? It was about a documentary about the wife beating verse taken out of context. 10 minutes, showing women that had the Quran inscribed over them to show you how oppressive Islam is. How oppressive. She says Muslims are oppressed. Muslim women are oppressed. I ask her, I go, have you looked in the church? When you look at nuns, do you have the same idea as you do when you look at Muslims? Of course not, because the media plays a crucial role in the idea of hijab. When we look at the mother of Isa, Maryam alayhi salam, does anyone see that she is oppressed because she is wearing a veil, not a picture can you find of Maryam alayhi salam without the headscarf, without that veil? No one ever says Maryam is oppressed. On the contrary, she is the embodiment of purification. And not only Islam, but in Christianity as well. We look at another beautiful example. And this, ironically, this woman is not of Muslim descent. She marries, her name is Krista Brima. She marries a Muslim by the name of Ismail. She has a daughter by the name of Aliyah. When she reached 9 years of age, she took her shopping and she liked the headscarf. Aliyah liked the headscarf. She says, Mother, can I buy it? Feeling embarrassed, the mother bought it for her. And she writes this article. She entitles it, Bikini or Headscarf, which offers more freedom? And she goes on the Oprah show. She says, when I bought it for her, the next day in the morning she wore it as I left the house. She says, when I looked at my daughter, from the waist down, it was very familiar. I understood, that's my daughter. From the waist up, because she was wearing the hijab, she says, I did not recognize my daughter. I did not recognize my daughter. She said, suspended in black cloth, I saw a gleaming face, like the moon in a starless sky. That's how a non-Muslim describes her when she was wearing the hijab. She says, when I truly understood the idea of hijab is when I dropped my daughter off to school. I usually drop her off and I quickly take off with the car. She said, that day, I wanted to see my daughter enter the school. She says, as she entered, I looked at all those around her. Everyone. She said, everyone was occupied. Everyone was occupied. Thinking, am I wearing this correctly? Is this the right shirt? Is it hugging my waist? Is it tight enough? What will the people think? She says, whereas I looked at my daughter wearing the hijab, and I knew that all these social ideas and social creations of what a woman should be will not affect my daughter. She says, my daughter, I knew then, will grow on her character. She will develop her character. She will develop who she shall be in the future. She says, that for me is the beauty of the hijab of Islam. That for me is the beauty. A Muslim revert by the name of Amira. She narrates, she says, when I came to Muslim women, I asked them, I say, why is it that you wear the scarf? She says, out of 99, one would understand the true meaning of the hijab. And I, being a non-Muslim, went and I researched. I said, this is very interesting. She says, now I know what the hijab stands for. She says, when I am asked what the hijab stands for, she says, first and foremost, it's to recognize and to tell people, I am Muslim. I am from the descendants and from the followers of Fatima. I represent the same hijab that Sayyida Fatima and Sayyida Zainab wore on the 10th of محرم. She says, by that, I will tell people with that veil on my head and with the hijab that I signify and embody everything that is pure. When I wear this, people know that I do not lie. People know that I do not cheat. People know that I will tell the truth. People know of the character I am supposed to be when wearing the hijab. She says that for me was enough to come to the religion of Islam. That for me was enough in itself. Now, amongst the beautiful stories that show us the morality of the hijab and the peak of what embodies the idea of hijab, we look no further than the story of the females that were the daughter of Shu'ayb. Were the daughters of Shu'ayb. In the story of Musa, it mentions the two daughters of Shu'ayb getting water for their father. He was of old age. So they were carrying a bucket. Now look at the modesty and the hijab. They saw around the well there were men, so they did not even get close to it. They did not get close to it because there were men around that well. 1 day, 2 days. Musa realizes, so he goes up to the ladies. He says, what is it that you want? He says, we want water from the well. He says, will I get it for you? He says, that would be great. Thank you so much. Gives him the bucket. Musa was known for his strength. Musa did not want to go back to his tribe because he hit a man and killed him. That's how strong he was. He would get angry in narrations and the blood from his hair follicles would start coming out. That's when he gets angry. So imagine what kind of strength Musa had. Now when we look at this, Musa, they say the well, the buckets back then, because it was carrying so much water that it needed 40 men to lift. Musa lifted it himself. He gets that bucket of water, takes it to the ladies. He says, can you carry it? She says, no. It's too heavy for us. He says, and my father, Shaykhun Kabir, is an old man. Can you take it for us? Now look, brothers and sisters, I want you to look at the modesty and the hijab of Musa. The idea of hijab that Musa shared. Musa says, do not walk in front of me, walk behind me. Walk behind me. He says, and how will we show you the way? He says, so I don't hear your voices, pick up pebbles on the floor. Pick up pebbles. And if you want me to go towards the right, you throw a pebble to the right. If you want me to go towards the left, throw a pebble to the left until I get to your house. Now look at the embodiment and the magnanimous idea and concept that that story showed us in the idea of hijab, brothers and sisters. That in itself, from the Quran. Now, sisters may come forth because it's a burden, nonetheless. It is a burden because every move that a woman that is wearing a scarf or a hijab does is seen in society. And people from Islam and from outside Islam realize that she is Muslim. So whatever she does, people understand that that's what Muslim women do. It's a heavy burden, brothers and sisters. I remember I was going, because what you wear has a direct correspondence to how you act. If I was to wear this outside, I find myself much more humble, understanding people, trying to be as friendly as possible, trying to show the morals, trying to show the akhlaq of Ahlul Bayt. When someone was to look at me, I'd greet him with a smile. Whereas if I was, for example, wearing everyday attire, you'd find a different characteristic, a different kind of outlook towards people, towards my friends. So what you wear has a direct relationship. When a woman wears a hijab, it has a direct relation to how she should act. Remember what Zainab wore. Remember, with all the calamities that befallen, Sayyida Zainab lived through so much, brothers and sisters. Imagine a woman at such a young age losing her grandfather. And who was her grandfather? The Prophet of Islam. She loses her grandfather. She loses her father, Ali ibn Abi Talib. She loses her mother, Fatima. And she sees the men that slept Fatima. She sees when Imam Ali was taken out of the house. Imagine Sayyida Zainab. Should she stay with Fatima al-Zahra behind the door? Or shall she go up to her father? When Sayyida Zainab comes, when her brother is murdered, Imam Hassan alayhi salam, and she sees people throw arrows on his coffin. She lived through all these calamities, and she lived up until she saw Aba Abdullah lay on the earth on the 10th of Muharram. After she sees her sons and her Ahlul Bayt all died before her, she undertook all these calamities, yet we find her on the 11th of Muharram still praying Salatul Layl, still upholding her hijab. When you look at this, brothers and sisters, you say, and you think to yourself, I find hijab difficult to wear. I find the akhlaq and morality of Ahlul Bayt hard to live by. Look at what Sayyida Zainab went through. Look at what Sayyida Zainab went through. When Fidda goes to the court of Yazid, not wearing her face veil, Yazid gets angry with her, says, how dare you come amongst men without your head covering? She says, you look at me and you say this, O Yazid, whilst the sons and daughters of the Prophet of Islam are carried from city into city without a veil. You say this to me, O Yazid. You say this to me. I end with a narration about Ali ibn Abi Talib. When he was reading Quran on the tomb of Fatima al-Zahra, he was reading and he was tired. He took a faint nap in which he saw Fatima al-Zahra come to him in his sleep. And when she came to his sleep, she said, Ali, get up, get up. She says, what is it? She said, Zainab has awoken. Zainab has awoken. Be with her, O Ali. He runs towards the house and sees Zainab. She wakes and she waits for him and says, where is my mother Fatima? And she wipes the tears. And Ali comes and he wipes the tears of her. But I ask you, who wiped the tears of Sayyida Zainab on the 10th of Muharram? When on the camel she looks at her brother
Imam Hussein, after the horses have trampled his body, she's on the camel, she's about to throw herself. She's about to throw herself on Imam Hussein. Imam Zain al-Abidin looks at Zainab, he says, do not do it, oh auntie. He says, do not do it, for Abbas is not here to put you back up on that camel, oh Sayyid. And I am too weak to carry on that camel. When all the Sabaya were running left, right and center on that night, brothers and sisters. A man comes and he says, I saw one of the Fatimiyat running. She was young. He says, I saw she had an earring. She said, I saw that she had an earring, so I ran to her. He says, I could not wait to take that earring off from her ear. He says, I ripped that earring off her ear and it bled and bled. 4-year-old. Look at the kind of human beings that the Imam came forth to stand against, brothers and sisters. We end on this note. We pray to Allah to let us understand and live by the morals and the idea and concept of hijab that Sayyidah Zainab tried to instill in us, that Sayyidah Fatima before her tried to show us, that the Imams tried to teach us. We live by them, by their ethics, by their morality. We pray to Allah that He resurrects us with Muhammad and Ali Muhammad. We pray to Allah to write us amongst the Shia of Ali. We pray to Allah that He writes for us to become one of the soldiers of the 313. We pray with the Fatiha, but before it, 3 of your loudest salawat ala Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad.